like I said, it wasn't anything bad, it was just being critical of some things.
Trying to find my Windsor, I can't find my Windsor photos.
What do you need in Windsor? Trying to,
Except like Windsor before 17 came out. It's photos of the village before 17 there.
you have some?
Yeah, I do, and I can't find them now.
Send them to me.
I will, if I can find them, I'll send them, I just can't find them.
I own 2/7 of Main Street. My wife and I have 2 of the 7 buildings.
Well, I mean, this is one, this is
You just
not
have
one.
highway stuff. The highway project would have my grandparents' property in it. So they moved there in '52.
So this is Johnson City. That's Home Depot.
Okay.
Well, what was Home Depot? GE's plant, when it was the GE plant.
Yep.
Gowdy and 17 with 201. It's just a white line before. And that was 58 or 62. I can't remember what year that is.
That's cool.
So,
I didn't realize Gowdy was that far back.
Yeah, but it's right behind, directly behind it.
Yeah.
So once they clear that site, there's something they could probably do with that site if they ever clear it. But no matter what, it's gonna take.
That contractor got shut down and fined, right? And then it just kind of died. So, like, how long does the litigation on that take? Why isn't there a,
Well, recently they just announced a fine for them, a serious fine for them, but
it's been like a decade.
it's over a decade. But people are homeless are going in there still all the time.
Yeah.
It's all asbestos. Yeah, the whole thing is just asbestos. It's crazy what's inside there.
Yeah, so I know they were, I'd read an article on it a few years ago.
A few years ago. Yeah, yeah.
I was surprised that they don't pull the bond or pull just another contract. I mean, it's a federal project or state?
The Fed is one who fined them right now, so who knows what's gonna happen with it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's millions. I mean, what did GE cost? 5 million or something to clear that up?
Yeah, I don't know.
That was at least 5 million to clean that up, so what's Gowdy? I wanna be there when the towers, that goes down, that's what I wanna be there for.
I got to do the one downtown by the downtown student housing by the arena.
Did you really?
NICEAG was like 50 feet in the ground.
That'd be kinda cool.
They drove in sheet pile and then put like spiral drive in and drove down into the hole and just excavated within their sheet pile and then had to fill it back up.
Really?
Took out the whole gasification stuff.
So they spent a lot of money.
Yeah. I think they were 25 feet in the ground and it was 50-foot diameter, 2 50-foot diameter brick gasification plant pieces just full of like coal tar.
17, when they were doing the bridges over the highway, when we rebuilt it and blew the ones out, there was explosions. And then about 10 seconds later, you heard doves and pigeons, all because they're all under the bridge.
I didn't see that in the photo.
It's not, you're not going to see it.
Like a video.
None of those were released, but a friend of mine whose girlfriend works with DOT, she's like, hey, check this out. Boom, 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 boom.
I have the video somewhere, but I don't know what I did with it.
I was there too that day when they blew it. I took some video. I've got it too.
My aunt sent it to me. She used to work for Economy Paving, so she was one of the contractors. I think she hired them. Called me for 2 hours today.
Did you? Right. Or me?
Nate, I talked to her a while.
I talked to the fire chief.
Okay.
I'll say something.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Deb should be coming.
I think Tommy said he wasn't coming.
Yeah, Tom said he's not coming.
And Mike's amazing. He was in town Friday.
What, are you shifting everyone down?
It's nice and roomy. It's nice and roomy like it.
Well, then.
So we got a fancy microphone over here. I guess I'm getting up there.
Fitness program. Fitness program.
What do you do for fitness, Al? I just called you Al, Alex.
Just lug my books around.
That's right.
Lugging my books. Actually, I play hockey on Thursdays.
Really? That's the only thing you do? I feel like that's actually worse for you. You play hockey once a week.
Bar time afterwards at midnight. It's rough. No, I'm in an old man league over here at the ice house.
Nice.
So we play. What are games? We're at 7 o'clock, 9:30. It used to be an hour later than that.
Are you in a league or do you?
Yeah. friend John started playing last year. Picked up skates 2 years ago for the first time. This year he finally skates okay. It took a little while, but it's the perfect league for him because like one of the goalies is 80.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And
Okay,
he's hard,
being 7
hard to play
o'clock, I'd
against.
like to call the
No joke.
special meeting of the Town of Shenango Planning Board for November 24th, 2025 to order. Diane, roll call.
Mr. Carnegie? Mr.
Here.
Mr. Zenner?
Here.
Ms. Masternardi? She's here, okay. Mr. Danley?
Here.
Yeah. 3-5.
Okay, I'd like to do the approval of minutes for the planning board, 10th of November, 2025. Approval. Does anyone have any questions or?
I'll second the motion.
May I have a vote?
Mr. Carnegie?
Aye.
Mr. Zenner?
Aye.
Mr. Danley?
Aye. Moving on to old business, new energy equity, Diamond Hills Solar, 1212 River Road. Mr. Irv, do you have anything new?
All right, I did do a new review. The board had asked me to look at seeker, and I did a seeker review of part 2, subsequent to your meeting that you had on 10/27. I kind of shorthanded some of it. One of the sticking points before I get into the whole topic that is worth taking a discussion on right from the start that kind of impacts the application in general is discussion on the soil types. It was brought to our attention that the site may or may not be nearly 100% prime or state important farmland. I had to check this anyway, so I dug into it and looked at it, and 3 of the soils out of the 4 on the site are either prime or, statewide important. One of them is out of the floodplain and doesn't flood. 2 of the other ones do have some flooding to them, but the frequency is unknown. So there's some concern that this amount of prime and state important flood farmland exceeds the impact to it exceeds the 50% ratio that's allowed by our code. Our code we have in 67 7.1A, we can't exceed 50% of the area of prime farmland and or farmland of statewide importance. And we have a pretty substantial amount that is more than 50% from what I see. So I talked with Nate today about it extensively, and we talked about discussing this on the front end. So I don't know if you want me to read the rest of it after we discuss this soil impact as it pertains to application viability rather than just seeker alone. My nose starts running when I start talking.
Alex mentioned or asked if the board would like to discuss the farmland issue that he just identified. If you would like to discuss that amongst yourselves now, if you have any questions that you want to ask of the applicant, about this issue, or do you want Alex to go through the rest of his report and then take everything, at that time?
I think we're fine with hearing the applicant, reply to those points. No, I don't think we have to go word for word.
Yeah, so we can certainly do that, go through Alex's points. So this is the first one. Ask Jody or her colleague to address it. And then, you guys can talk amongst yourselves. Oh, do you think that's a issue or not? And then Alex can go through the next one, and then we can have Jody comment on that one.
So go through the whole list.
No, they're going to ask Jody to respond right now.
Yeah,
that
Yes,
would be ideal.
that's where the speak, microphone.
Get my water out. Do you want me to respond to that comment first?
Is that one on?
To the prime farmland comment first? It's addressed in the application package, and we've answered it in several meetings, but I can address it again if you'd like.
Yeah, we're going to walk through Alex's comments and have you respond after he brings it up. So he just brought this one up, if you could just respond to that, and then we'll ask questions of you about, I guess, just the farmland ag piece right now.
If I can just make a quick note, too, that it is odd to go through a seeker Part 2 process before the county's 239 review has been finalized, and their review has not been finalized yet. So we can go through this and talk about each other's issues, but this is an informal review at this point, as long as everybody understands that.
If that's what you'd like to, if you'd like us to take more time in doing it, I think the planning board, at least my advice would say, sure. Certainly the county's given us feedback on several occasions now, and they've said repeatedly that you haven't finished or provided a complete application.
We'd
I
like
know,
to
I
talk
think
about
most
that, too.
recently, Alex, you were saying that the county, frustratingly from your point, is waiting for your comments. So, we certainly think that the county shouldn't have any more reason to delay on their end, at least after Alex sends them this most recent, round of his review. But yeah, we can certainly wait until the county's 239 is completely back.
So I guess I'd like to, this is Dennis, and you've spoken with him, but I'm going to let him take over for a moment before we get into Alex's comments, because I think there are some points here that need to be addressed before we move into the seeker review.
Hi, I'm Dennis Schreibus. I just was unclear, Mr. Van Wy, as to which comments you were referring to that the county is waiting on.
They've asked that Alex complete and provide his new round of review of the application to them before I think the county finishes their 239 response. Is that right, Alex?
Correct. Normally, they review on their own, but for whatever reason, they want my input ahead of theirs.
And my stance on that would be the county has been provided your complete application, which I think you've said is complete. You don't plan on providing anything further, which to me would mean the county has everything that they should have. They don't need our comments to complete their 239 response. But for whatever reason, they're saying that they want it before they'll do it. They've had their 30 days go and expire at this point.
So are we expecting another set of comments different from ERDA's letter of today, I guess, November 24, 2025? There'll be a separate set of comments, or is this the letter that the county's waiting for?
Yeah, we'll give them this one. They'll definitely get this one, and I would expect them to have their final review. As Nate indicated, they've got the same binder that we all had.
So there's no, I guess, Jody, maybe you can correct me, but I thought we were awaiting a different set of comments, set of comments particular to the application, but unrelated to the seeker.
That's correct, because the county's comments that came back and were copied to you indicate that they did not receive a full application package, and in their first paragraph, they said that they do not have a full site plan set from us. I was not allowed to send them our application package, and if you look at the application package, the site plan set that we included was a full engineering 30% site plan design set stamped by Hunt EAS Engineering, professional engineers. There's no reason in the world why the county shouldn't have that engineering site plan set.
Yeah, we agree.
So I don't understand the county's.
We agree with you.
Okay.
So we need, I guess, I think maybe the thing to do here is there is a lack of communication between the town, the county, and us. And I think I would like to request that there be a page turn, because the questions, Alex, that you're still asking on your letter from today, and the questions that the county is still asking when they say that their comments of November 2024 stand, after I have submitted thousands of pages of responses and environmental studies, indicates to me a negligent review. I would like to request a page turn in person of the application materials that I submitted to make sure that everybody has the information that I submitted. There shouldn't be this many questions still.
I don't know what to tell you about the county's comments. You know,
I'd like
they
to-
are what they
I
are.
understand, I'm not asking you to answer for the county, but I would like to answer their questions and your questions. And I think the way to do that is to sit down with the application and do a page by page and answer your questions. And probably an evening like this is not the way to do it. If you want to have it in an open public forum and we spread everything out on a table and invite whoever wants to come, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, to the extent you're talking about responding to the county's comments and asking the county, you know, for more clarity about what their issues are, I mean, that's, I think, appropriate. Doesn't have to be at a planning board meeting because it's the county's comments, not, you know, I mean, the planning board, of course, is concerned about them, but, you know, that's a very different type
They
of
won't
discussion.
communicate with me is the problem, Nate. I've tried that, and they said all communication has to come through you guys. So if
Yeah, you know, happy to reach out to the county and say, hey, you know, the developer is asking for, you know, Laura, a sit-down like this. Please, you know, can we make that happen so that the county's comments can be better understood? That, I don't have an issue with that.
I think the thing maybe being missed in some of Jody's frustration comes from the fact that until 2 minutes ago, Jody was under the impression, apparently wrongly, because of the letter from the county, that they didn't have all of the materials. Their letter, where is their letter? From the 26th, I believe, of October, it would imply that the town, their letter of October 9th would imply that the town had not provided them all of the information, and that the binder that's up there and the binder we have here was not provided to the county. So I think there was a level of frustration, and that we attempted to give a copy of the application to the county. They refused to accept it, and this letter would, and it implies that they hadn't received the full application from you all. So we take you at your word that the full application's been provided, so thank you. And they say specifically, the project lacks a complete site plan that addresses outstanding items to make a full assessment of impacts. And we know that a full site plan's in your binder and in ours. So I think that's why it feels that getting the county and the town and us together makes sense to figure out who has what and to answer everybody's questions. And I suspect a lot of the questions will overlap, so it would be an efficient use of time, we suspect.
Okay. So, you know, we'll reach out, Alex and myself, to, you know, copying the chairman, to Laura Zier, just to try to get a date set up for you to sit down with Alex and the county. If one of the planning board members or two of them would like to sit in on that, I mean, you folks certainly can, but I'm not sure that you're absolutely necessary for that. If you, because there might be some pretty boring minutia gotten into, but again, that's certainly something you folks can do. I can, once we have that initial communication with Ms. Zier, you know, find out if any of you guys want to join in, and I'll let you know some dates.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So Jody, I'm not sure, I mean, I know you did just get Alex's comments tonight, and, you know, some of them presumably shouldn't be too much of a surprise to the extent that there was discussion at the last planning board meeting of areas that the planning board was, I think, more focused on than others. You know, I know you've said, oh, you know, your application materials already address the farmland issue. You know, I think application states something to the effect, I'm going off of memory here, that the area should not be considered prime or statewide importance because it floods. So the town code section that references indicates the threshold and the identification of soils is based off the USDA NRCS soil data web soil survey thing. It doesn't, you know, so that's the metric by which we determine whether there is soil of statewide importance or prime farmland there or not. And the application materials you submitted show the same soil map that I think Alex looks at, and it's the same soil map that the Broome County Soil Water Conservation District also looks at. And in it, certainly, I'm gonna say, you know, I'm gonna ballpark 90% of your project is within the 3 soil groups identified as prime and or statewide importance based on the soil survey. I don't see any indication in the soil survey materials that once it's identified, if you can show that it floods often, that suddenly it's not that anymore. So is there a variance process, or like, the way it seems to me would be you'd have to go back and get a variance or have the USDA remove the land from the soil survey?
You actually don't. It's in Appendix E of our application here, and it's also explained in the narrative part. But the USDA has, shoot, I just lost my page. The USDA explains further how they do their soil classifications. I don't have a page number on this because it came right from the USDA code book.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, where it talks about if it's subject to flooding.
Right, if you look in Appendix E, it does explain how if prime soils are flooded more than, you know, certain amounts of time per year, or, you know, whatever it may be, and I'm going off of memory here too, but you've got the same binder that I do, that those are no longer considered prime farmland. And I think we've established here over and over again that this property floods. So this is no longer considered prime farmland by the USDA.
So why is the soil survey map still show it that way?
Because they haven't been remapped. Those soil survey maps are, they're old. They're old. It's similar to with the DEC, how the DEC has just redone their wetlands their wetlands maps, and now they are going back out and mapping wetlands, because the wetlands maps were done by aerial footage from the 60s and 70s. And now we are going back out and looking to see where our wetlands really are. So in this case, with our wetlands, that hurt our project, right? Now our wetlands are bigger than what we thought they are. But with the farmland thing, with the prime farmland, that actually helps us because we know that this area floods. We've seen it, we've heard about it from members of the public, our landowner is aware. This is not prime farmland, this land is floodland.
So the town's definition of prime farmland literally says land designated as prime farmland in the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS's Soil Survey Geographic Database on Web Soil Survey. So I'm trying to reconcile the town code's definition, which directs the reference standard to use and says that's what's prime farmland, versus what you're proposing, which is going outside of the town code definition, which is based to or tied to a metric.
I think one way to reconcile this, and the easiest way to reconcile this, is we understand that there's difference sometimes between what's on a map and what's on the real world. If a road gets rerouted, sometimes our maps don't show that immediately. It's the same thing with wetlands and prime farmland and floodplains. The earth changes and humans change the earth. So I think one of the ways that the town can address this and the code not moving with the farmland and the floodplain is that we can have the USDA, although this is a federal government program, go out and remap the site. And because it floods the way it does, and there's proof of that, they will remap the area as not prime. But that's probably a years-long process. So what I would ask is that the board use that as a condition of the special use permit. That before we can get our building permit, that we have the USDA go out and look at the site.
And then, related, but I think a slightly different issue than simply the map or the soil map not quite matching or showing that areas that, you say, oh, they're flooding, so it shouldn't be. The Shenango, what's the H? The CH, yeah, the Shenango soil, it's like CH something. The one on the east side of the property. Both the existing and the preliminary flood maps show this area of the property is completely out of the floodplain. It's not in the 500-year floodplain at all, right? It's way up there. It becomes an island, it looks like, when everything else gets flooded. It looks like the same little hill that Mr. D'Amatos' residence is on, because it shows that his house doesn't get flooded. And so, your argument about this being areas that's flooding wouldn't apply to this parcel, and or this portion of the parcel, and it's a very significant portion of the property, and I think the 50% threshold, to the extent it applies to prime and farmland of statewide importance, would apply to that land at the very least, and would need to show coverage of no more than 50% of that portion, if everything else you're saying is accurate.
So most of our panels are in that floodplain area. It's our equipment pads that are outside of that. And I believe Mr. D'Amatos' house is outside of that flood zone area. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, let me find the map or the site plan portion of it, because that'll be easier to identify. Yeah, so it's C200. When you look at C200, you'll see maybe a third of your project is, it shows the 100-year floodplain limit, which I know from looking at the FEMA flood maps and preliminary flood map, this area is also just not in the 500, not in any floodplain at all. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 13 rows of solar panels in there. Which, if what you're saying is true, that areas that are flooded shouldn't be considered prime, well, this is not an area that floods. And it is identified as a soil of importance for the state. And so under the code, this shouldn't be covered any more than 50%.
Okay, so you're saying you need us to take this back and do the math and figure out if we've got more than 50% here. And then if we were to do that, then you would be happy with adding that as a condition to the special use permit?
Well, you'd satisfy the code requirement for that, yeah. I don't know if the planning board would be satisfied with a condition on the special use permit like that, or if they would say, no, get the, have the soil maps updated before we actually approve the project. That's an item for them to discuss, and it might not be, it might be too fresh for them.
That might be possible under the current administration. It just might not be possible.
Right, and federal level issues unfortunately are outside of our purview, but, so did we hit on all the soil stuff, Alex?
The other big one on these is if the flood criteria on that really does rule these out. The other discussion is just to assure, if the board agrees with the applicant, that the 2 prime soil areas are flooded and would not be included as in that 50% rate.
Right. Well, and she's proposing that they apply to the USDA to get a soil survey map updated, so, yeah. Okay. Yeah. You want to just keep going through what your next area of major concern is?
Okay, so for this, I started this out with just a part 2 review and end it with some engineering review. Part 2, just going through the lines. Number 1 was impact on land. The board previously in October basically had answered yes, that there might be some impacts. F was a subject there was a small impact. Hang on, let me flip to my markups. basically tried to give you guys detail on the pieces you asked me questions about. F was just a result in increased erosion. So that was just a no or small impact because that one's dealt with via their stormwater plan and their DEC stormwater permit. 2, impact on geological features. There was nothing there that you had me look up further. Impacts on surface water. The initial answer was yes, there could be impacts. Scrolling through that one, A, B, and C, you didn't have any concerns there. But D was relative to the proposed action may involve construction within or adjoining a freshwater tidal wetland. So we were wanting to get that letter. We got the letter from the freshwater wetland jurisdictional review from DEC. Jody sent that today. So within that, the DEC designated the project map wetlands W1, W2, W3, and W4 as Class 2 freshwater wetlands and/or freshwater wetlands adjacent areas regulated by the New York State DEC. They indicated that these contain unusual importance criteria. The determination will remain in place until August 3rd, 2030. It's my understanding that the Class 2 freshwater wetlands of the state still have the 100-foot required no impact buffer area from the wetlands unless the applicant can obtain a permit or waiver of the criteria, which they don't have that to date, but Jody had mentioned on the 27th of last month that they would be pursuing that to try to achieve no project change. However, with detail of this letter today, it's not just a simple process. The permit application may be rejected, approved, or required to make modifications to the state. In any case, it stands with a moderate to large impact until they know that they don't have to modify it. So the impact of the wetland, until we know that determination, the permit determination may require a redesign of the surrounding panel arrays as well as relocation of the access road. So if you can envision a 100-foot offset off of that wetland, it wipes out a piece of the access road all the way around the entire wetland and has to move it, and then also might move some other components close to the control station and eliminate some of the array.
Alex, that's a misrepresentation. We are in the buffer of 0.08 acres of the buffer. And then we are impacting part of a wetland ditch.
If you want,
And I can give you those calculations. I didn't have chance today when I sent you the jurisdictional determination, but I don't think that considering 0.08 acres of a wetland buffer and a ditch can be considered a moderate to large impact legally under the seeker process. And given that I was given this 8 minutes before this meeting, and I do appreciate that you probably worked all weekend on this. Thank you for that. I need time to respond to this, and as part of the seeker review process, anytime a town declares a moderate to large impact, you have to fill out a Part 3 form, and I would respectfully request that you give us the chance to use that Part 3 form to provide you with our mitigation strategies, many of which have already been provided. But I think one of the mitigation strategies for moderate to large impacts, even though we don't have them on this project, but moderate to large impacts for wetlands is, according to the DEC, getting a wetlands permit. That is considered a mitigation strategy for seeker Part 3 forms.
so just in fairness for today, my comment on this stems from receipt of the August 5th document today. I didn't have an opportunity to review it until today. And there's no drawing that shows that 100-foot buffer in our application package currently.
Jody, this certainly has a scale on it, and I could see, 0 to 100 feet. Are you saying, so like on, again, C200, the shaded cross-hatched area is the wetlands itself, right?
Unfortunately, I can't see. My drawings are printed out really small. What I'm going to do,
Do you want to just?
I
here.
can come up there, but
Thanks.
yes, and we have, is this a new plan? Yeah. So under the general permit, we would have, the way that they, oh my God, it's gonna freak out. Under the general permit, they
And Jody, you're saying it's only 0.8 acres of the project that's within the buffer?
It's .08 of, on the new general permit of how, and that doesn't include the access road, that includes, let me get you the breakdown, because they calculate different impacts differently now under the new.
If you can in a drawing show where the buffer is, right, and then
I will
maybe
do that for you.
indicate on the map, however you want to do it, like, oh, this area, here's the criteria that apply to
We
this.
haven't started applying for the general permit yet, because that permit just came out. It's a brand-new permit from the DEC, so the
Right.
DEC doesn't,
Do you agree or disagree that if the DEC, that the DEC has authority to deny that permit?
the DEC always has the authority to deny that permit, similar to how they have the authority to deny the Speedies permit for stormwater.
Right. And then.
But they don't.
Do you agree or disagree that they could require modifications to your project as a result of the permit?
They could, and if they did that, then we would have to come back before the planning board and have you re-review our application. So there's the fail-safe there for you.
And then can you explain, I guess, the rationale why the board should, I mean, aside from the other hurdles we'll get through, if this is the only one that remains, why the board should issue an approval today with this question unanswered and then potentially have to reopen the project as opposed to simply waiting until you've completed the DEC review and then reviewing it at that point?
Yeah, it's sort of a what comes first, the chicken or the egg question. We can't submit a 30% civil design set to the DEC. They want more of a 60-90% civil design set. And we can't do that set.
These are 100%, right?
No, these are not. These are.
What we have to have is a 100% design set on
No,
civil.
you don't. That's not required by your code. That's not required by your code at all. It's not required by any code I've ever seen in the 400 projects I've permitted, Alex.
What's the 70% that's going to change still?
A lot of things change. There's a lot of value engineering that goes on. A lot changes between the discretionary permit, the SUP, and the 90% civil design set that gets submitted to the state for permitting. And it's not a lot that is changing internal to the fence, but it's things like, there's just value engineering, there's electrical components that might change, and all of those things, they don't affect the environmental impacts, they don't affect, what the site looks like, but the DEC won't accept anything less than, or they won't accept the 30% civil design. So this set is not acceptable to them, and I can't move this project forward with an engineering firm until I have the SUP. It's the same thing for a Speedies permit. So again, you could add that as a condition to the SUP, that we have to have those permits before a building permit.
We'll certainly look into that.
Thank you.
Does the board have any concerns or things you want to question about the wetlands issue?
No, I think we have the other. Beach edge to death.
Okay.
All right, into section 3E. 3E was one that I noted as a potential small impact relative to turbidity and water body, or either from upland erosion or runoff from disturbing bottom and sediments. There's potential for erosion on every project, but the same answer on this one is always that it's mitigated via their stormwater permit and their SWIP. So they have that controlled, so it's a no or small. Let's see, F, G, H, I, J, K were no impact, and we didn't list any other impacts under L. Into 4, impacts on groundwater. The initial answer was yes, just because you had had a further review in H under other impacts. All the others were no impact. There was just a discussion on contaminants from the panels or fire-related impacts. These, while they could occur, I believe we deem those no or small. As any project can have a fire, it usually doesn't factor into the seeker component. So that was left as a no or small impact. Impacts on flooding, initial answer was yes with further review. There's no impact on floodway. There was a discussion on moderate to large impact of the 100-year floodplain, with 2/3 of the project appearing to be within the boundary. I have concerns still on the design side relative to the fence posts and the panel posts. I understand that the fence type is designated to break loose and pivot to allow flow under it, but the panel or the fence posts themselves do not. I'm still concerned about floating debris, trees, brush, ice, et cetera, hanging up on the fence posts themselves, as well as the hundreds of system array posts. The applicant submitted a floodplain development application, but additional review and details needed on that to finalize that piece of application.
What additional information can I provide you specifically? Because I guess the thing here is, if there were debris hung up on those posts, it would cause damage to our equipment, and we have insurance for that. That's damage to our equipment and a cost to us. And our insurance company would deal with that. What can I provide to you that will satisfy this specifically?
Alex, I think the concern is that if debris catches on the fence posts and then forms some sort of a dam, it diverts water off-site in some fashion. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, it pushes it at a different level and a different location. It could end up in a hydraulic jump, or it could offset it to the neighbor. We just don't know what that impact would be. We're just trying to get a grasp of if a debris load comes down, how does it get hung up on all those posts? Understand that cleanup of it is on your end is your problem, but there is also the potential for it to all get hung up in the fence works and the panel posts. Sorry.
Right, so if it pushes, what's the likelihood that significant debris will catch and then push water off-site? And then if it pushes off-site, where will it go? And I think Alex is saying, he's got questions because it's a modeling issue, ultimately, I think. I mean, that's how I've typically seen flooding issues and stormwater issues, resolved.
Then it has to go through a floodplain officer.
Right. But, so I mean, Alex, is there, to Jody's question, is there something more specific that you can say that you can identify that would be helpful?
I guess without flood knowledge of the site and what does come through there typically on a standard flood, I mean, from the soil side, we're hearing that it floods routinely. What is the load on this that we can anticipate, and is it anything that we have to worry about, or is it hung up along the riverside? I don't have any historical info on that, and I don't know that you can actually do a calculation. It's not like HECRAS has a model for debris catchment. But I do have to get that piece of application through the floodplain officer. It's not just me.
Has the floodplain officer looked at it? Yeah, I have no idea what else to provide you here, because, I mean, we can go through 1,000 what ifs, right? But I guess anything could get hung up on it, right? A tree, a piece of the neighbor's trampoline, like whatever is floating from.
Right, so worst case is it ends up
But I don't know of any way to model that for you.
That's exactly the concern.
But again, that's an insurance risk for us, and it would be damage to our equipment, and our insurance company would come out and
I think you
fix-
just identified the exact concern, though, right? Which is that anything could get hung up on the posts because now there are posts there where none currently exist. And so the question is, what is the typical debris found in a flood? Like if trees are getting swept away in a flood, I'm not an expert on this. I'm trying to give you some help as to identifying the issue. What can get hung up between these posts? Are they wide enough that nothing will get hung up on them?
Do you have other buildings in the town that are built in floodplains? And I'm wondering what kind of modeling they're required to do, because you ought to know, right? We have floodplains all over this town, and I'm wondering what the precedent is, because I don't have a clue what kind of modeling I can provide to you. And if you have experience with floodplains in this town, like it seems like you do, what can I provide to you that the other buildings that have gone up have been required to provide?
Dave, if I may. So 2 years ago, Harbor Freight was coming to the town of Shenango, and they purchased a building for $700,000, and they were ready to go until they realized that building was in a floodplain. existing previously before that, so it wasn't under the FEMA rules before that. Once they started renovating the building, they had to strike it back up and rebuild the building basically to make it flood.
Okay, there are standards for that, agreed.
Kind of what happened.
Right, but there,
And so they came and got a building permit and were permitted for their reconstruction?
Before they even got the building permit, they realized what was going on. So
So-
they didn't do the due diligence when they purchased.
I know, but my question is, did they
Yeah.
enter into the building and get a C of O?
After they rebuilt the building.
They rebuilt the building, and so did they come here for any permitting?
Yes.
And what were they required to show to prove that
I don't know
any?
that, I'm not code enforcement, but I know.
Well, right, that's the point. So you have a perfect precedent where someone redid a building, and you
I think-
asked us for something that you are not asking them. So what we're asking is, if there was a precedent where something's built in a floodplain, we'd just like the same standard applied, and so.
and to that question, or to that point, I would agree the same standard should apply, and I think the key distinction between the Harbor Freight Building and what you're proposing to do is the Harbor Freight Building was pre-existing. It's been there for a very long time, and so they came to reconstruct an existing building and modify the existing structure. What you're proposing is entirely new construction. If this was an existing solar field and you came to say, oh, we want to refurbish an existing solar field, it'd be, I think, a different thought process, but
So
I
they
don't.
didn't need to comply with code when they got their certificate of occupancy and meet all the requirements?
Of course, they
When
needed to
you-
comply
when
with
you-
code. You're asking what level of review they were required to go through and the level of analysis. Again, it was an existing building. I don't recall exactly what the town planning board
It's
had
fine.
them do.
We'll just look for other precedent, and I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, I don't recall new construction going into the floodplain like this.
So with the Harbor Freight, we had them submit a floodplain application. They did do a floodplain development application. We did have them do a mass balance calculation in the parking lot. They added 3 inches of asphalt. I made sure that they did a mass balance calc on that and that they removed enough material to offset the fill that they placed in the floodplain. So they didn't, it wasn't that they didn't do some site plan work on that as well through their process. They removed a go-kart track that offset the paving they were doing and any additional sidewalk work. So they actually calculated their input into the floodplain. And we've had other ones though that.
So Alex.
Again, I think what they're asking is, what more do you think the town needs in order to properly conduct its review of the floodplain issue in this area? Because, I mean, I understand the concern that you've raised, which is new posts. Okay. But I think, what in our application process have they not given you, or is there anything else otherwise that would be helpful for you and the floodplain manager to finish the review?
Yeah, so on the floodplain manager side, within that application, you'll get asked to make sure that your earthwork balances, like your driveway that goes into any of that's mounted up is offset by some other balancing offset. Same with the pad for the equipment. Like you can't just have a bulk fill that isn't offset by something else. We don't want to see a wall, basically, with that driveway design in the floodplain paperwork.
Hey, Alex, I went through that code as part of my narrative. I went through the floodplain code. And anything else that the floodplain director, is that his title? I'm not sure. He hasn't reached out to me. I don't know if he doesn't have a copy of the application or how that process is supposed to work, but in the code it said to submit it to the town planning board. But I have gone line by line through that code and responded in blue font and submitted everything that you asked me for previously, including the raised panels, everything. So we are code compliant with this project as far as the floodplain goes, and anything else that the flood department wants would be fine, but this is just sort of your comment here, I can't provide, that doesn't give me anything to shoot for. I can't respond to it.
Do we want so many posts equals a building equivalent and compare it?
That's your question. I mean,
if your posts are, say your posts are a half-foot diameter, I got 40 of them in a line across there, I've got a 20-foot obstruction in the floodplain. I mean, that's basically what I'd be comparing to, you know, will a 20-foot obstruction.
I guess though, I mean.
It's cumbersome.
Yeah, so Alex, I mean, maybe it's not Jody, but if you can just do some more review and give some thought, because, I mean, I can hear the planning board thinking that a half-foot wide post is, of course,
Are not, if you've
Yeah.
seen a solar project, they're not, that's a gross overestimation.
6 inches,
They're fence posts.
2 inches.
Are you augering in 4-inch columns, or you got 6x6 H-piles that you're hammering in?
I mean, it depends on the geotech investigation again.
So we have to assume the worst, which would be the half-foot.
Sure, it's still less impact than building a house or a Harbor Freight.
Well, I think this is the question that Alex has flagged, and I think you're right to say, Alex, can you give us a better understanding of, you know, the concern? But there's a big difference between a half-foot versus a 20-foot versus something that's spaced out every, how far apart are the posts?
I'd have to look at the engineering plans. I think, Alex, if you can give me some more guidance on this at a different time, that would be helpful. We're just not going to get anywhere with it tonight, so if you want to move on.
Sounds good. All right. So going back through this, let's see. Flooding. 500-year,
We were on
Let's
heading
see.
to number 6.
yep, I think I'm already on to 6. Impacts on air, we didn't have any, so that was a no. Impacts on plants and animals, the initial answer was yes, but further review for A, B, and C relative to species and whatnot was all no or small impacts based on correspondence with the government. We didn't have any other things to list there, so that one stayed as a no or small. Impact on agricultural resources was initial answer was yes, with further review being, was it a moderate to large impact on soils group 1 through 4, but reduced to a small impact by the seeker workbook information and applicant response. However, I just refer to H below, the subsequent discussion that I started off with relative to the concern on prime farmland or farmland of special importance, and that's more relative to our code, not necessarily seeker. B on soils was a small impact, or on ag rather. C was again one that's dealt with via soils in the stormwater permit. D, the proposed action may irreversibly convert agricultural land to non-agricultural uses, either more than 2.5 acres if located in an ag district, or more than 10 if not within an ag district. So there's discussion on if this was moderate, but then, you know, through the decommissioning or bond method, those poles are supposed to be removed at the end of the project. So I believe discussion there was that that would be knocked back to small. E, F, and G are no impacts. H was the other that I added relative to the soil types, more so to our permit. So just want to see 8H resolved. Then 9, impact on aesthetic resources. That one, just a reminder there, that's relative to an interaction between proposed project and scenic or aesthetic resources upon review, which is, seeker just looks at those as designated federal, state, or local scenic aesthetic resources. We don't have any designated close to that, nor do the state or our federal side of things. So there's no impact on 9. Historic and archaeological resources, it's a no impact. It was, it could have been a potential one, but they already had their SHPO review letter of no impact. The impact on critical environmental areas, there are none in the area, so that's just automatically no. Impact on transportation, we answered yes. There is obviously concern about traffic and big truck traffic and delivery times and bus times. But A, B, C, D, and E were no impact. And then F was the moderate discussion on, I guess the first piece was we asked for a traffic route plan just to confirm that we have no impacts. I wanted to see, I think Nate had mentioned it, but we wanted to see where the main truck routes would be coming and going to the site. That wasn't provided yet, but then on truck traffic, It will be more than is typical for the area, but I just wanted to call that out, that while it might be perceived as a moderate to large impact, review of seeker guidelines and the documentation submitted lead it to be a small impact, as there are less than 100 vehicle trips per day. So, you know, we look at it and think the trucks, there are quite a few trucks, but for that road type out there, it's relatively small on that road. And in the 239 process, I didn't note it here, the county didn't have any comments relative to their own roadway. Impact on energy, no impact. Impact on noise, odor, and light. The initial answer was yes, with further review. So moderate to large, noise may be greater than ambient. The applicant indicated that the town didn't have a noise ordinance. However, there is one in section 73-9A. So we do have a performance standard section in the zoning code, and that pertains to, A pertains to noise. The package indicates that noise levels will be approximately 50 decibels during regular operation. Our code stipulates that a noise level matching ambient is allowable unless it is in a specific use area, such as residential use area, with an allowance that has an allowance of 60 decibels daytime and 50 at nighttime. So the question I had for Nate was, you know, in an agricultural setting, is this project restricted to noise level being matching ambient? The problem we have in review on this is we don't have a noise analysis indicating an ambient noise level to use as a basis to compare to the 50. Also, we don't have any projected noise level for while the construction is going on to know that we're not going to exceed that ambient level throughout construction time frame. You know, the paperwork in the application indicates that they're going to drive piles. So worst case is we're running pile drivers throughout the day and might have that noise compounded with other vehicles, equipment use, and any boring equipment. So I understood that the geotechnical report isn't available yet, so when we look at noise, we assume the worst case. Excuse me. On 15B, C, there was no impact. D was moderate impact on visual from potential glare from panels during daytime hours. I know they have a glare study that the FAA is impacted is not a concern. And so discussion on this one, I think, is just warrants our final discussion on the visual impacts relative to their renderings. So on noise, I think we will have some questions there still relative to ambient compared to construction time frame and then versus their 50 proposed. Sure, Jody, thoughts on that one? Would you guys be able to get an ambient to compare to? It looked like you.
Do you want a noise analysis? I can send you a noise analysis for the site. That's not a problem. We can do modeling. It's desktop, but I can send that to you.
Yeah, and if it compares to ambient, you might have to get a reading out there, like a pretty generic morning time, nighttime, or morning time.
That's not a problem.
And a daytime.
We've got folks that live right around here, so that's not a problem at all. Our surveyor actually lives here in the town, so
Okay.
That's fine.
One of the earlier sections, Nate just reminded me, were you still going to give us a road use, just kind of a rough?
Yep, I can get that for you too. It's just not as quick and easy as it sounds like, but that's coming, you know.
Yep, okay. Where did I go to? 16. Impact on human health. We ruled out proximity to group homes, right, Diane? You had given me the list. They wanted to go in Poplar Hill, but they changed. I don't recall one on River Road close to this, though. Right, Diane? Okay, thanks. Sorry to put you on the spot, but we disliked that one so much, they looked elsewhere, thankfully. So no impacts on human health. Consistency with community plans, that one has no impact on community plans, but then consistency with community character. We still had the concerns on B, small to moderate impact. Will the fire department require any additional equipment in the result of the need to provide service to the use? Perhaps you can get a will serve or no impact letter from them to help support our review. I don't recall seeing that in there. Sorry if it was there and I missed it. C, D, and E were no impact items. F was moderate to large impact as the proposed action is inconsistent with the character of the existing landscape. This is the visual aspect. They did give us renderings at 7 locations along with photo adjusted versions of them for wintertime and no leaf conditions. I know that we had a discussion at one point if we would want real-time photos now that the leaf drop has occurred to help with that review to definitively see. And then there was also a comment at one point, are the 7 locations adequate? There's discussion of adding 1244 River Road, the Penny property, which is directly north of the project, and we're looking south right down at it. So that's a board discussion on those if I didn't have a direct request from her on those latter 2 things. And then I went into my previous review, just in general, everything stood from before. Archaeo was all set, species review was set, wetland report came in, Knox box was there. Sorry, I'm reading these backwards. 8-foot fence was provided per code. I guess number 3, I asked for truck turns that we've asked for every project so far. I didn't see any fire apparatus truck turn on a plan. If you could add that, if we've got another rendition coming through, throw a auto turn with a fire truck on it, if you can, or your biggest vehicle coming and going. One was just a reminder that the project is filling up the 1 parcel with solar panels, but the access is over 2 others, so it's technically on 3 properties. That's reflected in the application. Floodplain, they're going through the floodplain application permit process. Decommissioning plan is there. I think once we get to a final point on this, if it gets to that level, then we have required a final review by legal counsel required. That's supposed to say as the project progresses, not acts. That looks bad. So Nate does a final review at the end of that after we've blessed that as a board. These are board pieces for later. The ag data statement, I think I mentioned that earlier. There is a farm operation that has come forth that exists, and it is the neighbor to the north. They've provided documentation that they do have an active farm with the government. So we'll have to readdress that ag data statement and how that may or may not impact the project. The project is subject to 239 review within 500 feet of a state or county road and an agricultural district. They've given us comments, and we discussed this earlier, that we're going to check in with Laura on a final round. As with every other project review, I denote if it's in an aquifer protection zone. This one's in zone 2. It does not have any impacts on our aquifer, and we just have to make sure that nothing changes to that. Seeker, I'll kick that one back to Nate. I've given my part 2 comments based on the 1027 meeting and my review of it. So that's the end of my piece. I can answer any questions though.
Thank you, Alex.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know Jody and her colleague do want to, I think, respond in writing to Alex's comments and some of the discussion to provide some additional context information, supplemental information to the planning board. Certainly, Alex noted a few things that I think Jody said, yes, they'd be happy to provide to the town. The applicant has requested that we reach out to the county to set up a turn-by-turn page review with the county to go over the county's comments to try to really understand what the county believes is not complete with the application and possibly allow the applicant, some better insight into the county's more specifically identified concerns with Alex in attendance and, like we talked about, possibly a board member or 2. Jody, I'm not sure if you think there's anything else to do tonight at this point.
Hi. Again, my name's Dennis Schreibus. Just like to thank you for going through that letter. Appreciate the opportunity to reply to the few things that we did. Thank you all for hearing us over all these many months. Appreciate you all serving in this position and the time that you put into this, so thank you. I think there's a couple comments. I think that Nathan summarized them well, so thank you, Nathan. We really appreciate the opportunity to try to sit down with the town and county and to understand the county's confusion and answer their questions, so thank you for facilitating that. I would say there's maybe two things that give us, well, one thing that gives us pause, and then one thing we'd like to respectfully request. I'll start with the respectful request. I think that public comment has been open for some time. I think that a lot of public comments have come in on projects that aren't our project, and to us, it seems to make sense to close the public comment, at least for our project tonight. If that's within your view to do so, we would appreciate that. And then the second thing I'd like to respond to, I'm sorry, two more points, apologies. The first is the 239 review by the county. I think as Jody indicated earlier, we think maybe the cart's a little bit ahead of the horse with the comment letter that was provided tonight by Mr. Urda. Sorry if I mispronounced that. We would respectfully request that we have the opportunity on part 3 to respond, and that this letter not be provided to the county until we've had that opportunity to sit down with them, understand their comments, address them. We think that that needs to happen. That puts the horse before the cart, and that sending this letter in advance of getting the response from the county and the 239 process is going to poison the well, if you will. So we would respectfully request that we hold off on sending this letter to the county until that sit-down happens and we're able to address that. Again, I mentioned closing public comments, and the third thing, just with respect to the process, we have this letter tonight, and certainly you all have an opportunity to raise comments whenever you see fit. But I just would, again, respectfully ask that we sort of have a meeting of the minds, that the engineering review is sort of done, and that there won't be big comment letters. Certainly on the things that we owe you, road, noise, truck turns, things like that, dealing with the flood fence post issue, certainly there'll be ongoing question and dialogue. But in terms of receiving sort of another 6-page engineering review letter to our application, we hope we're finished with that with due respect. So I think I raised 3 points, and I'll now shut up. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I can just briefly jump in. I think regarding the request that Alex's letter not get sent to the county, I think I'm okay with that right now, because Alex himself indicated, specifically regarding the question of the flood posts, I think there needs to be a little more clarity from Alex's side as to what the potential request is to flesh that out. I don't know if the words are like a hydrologic debris study or something like that, but I just made those up. I didn't make it up. But setting Alex back to just think a little more, what's the proper information to provide for the board to understand, is this really truly an issue over there or not? And then when it comes to Alex's comments, I understand your request. I'm going to say Alex will provide the comments he provides when he provides them, and the board will review and understand them at the time. I understand your point, which is that getting continued extensive engineering comments can become frustrating, and certainly I think the planning board would agree. They would be very frustrated with Alex if he continues to have extensive comments like that as the project goes on, because it's important that the planning board be provided as much information as they can in the process on the front end, so that they can actually engage and deliberate more fully. So, Alex, I will say, please make sure all engineering comments have been provided as much as you can. Understanding, of course, there will be some things that get further submitted and need review.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think at this point, you do have, unless you folks want to discuss any more, I think you've heard a little about where we're at now. You know, do you have anything that you want to add to the question, or excuse me, discussion specifically? Are there any additional things that you folks want to see from them? I mean, Alex and I have been speaking the most tonight.
No, I appreciate all your insight and information that you've provided tonight. And I think we're all set as far as questions on those things right now, and we can just proceed with.
Right, so then, of course, the third thing that was asked was closing the public hearing tonight or not.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. There are a couple of people here that might have realized we still had the public hearing open. If they have something to say, we could go ahead and listen to them tonight and then close the public hearing.
So, Mr. Chairman, I was going to agree with you. And then as we've had the discussion tonight, and the applicant has indicated that they would like, you know, that the 239 comment period, they want to get that finalized. You know, that they're viewing this as still open, not done. They want to do that page by page turn. If the county does have additional comments, and if the county's stance that it's still open for their comment is correct, we should wait to close the public hearing until after the 239 comments have been completely received. I would like to have the public hearing done, but at least that is my thought. And I understand why the applicant is saying what they're saying, but
It's a fair point, Nathan. Thank you.
Okay, well, then we'll follow your direction.
so moving on to the public hearing.
Okay, so at this point, I'd like to open the public hearing. Most of you might have been here before. Basically, come up to the microphone, tell us your name, your address, and voice your concerns. You have 5-minute limits, and it's not really like we were just doing here, like question and answer, and you're going back and forth. It's just you make your comments, and then we make note of them so we can think about what you have to say. Is there anyone here that is prepared or wants to make any comments tonight?
Hello again. My name is Jeff Allen. I live at 1220 River Road, directly adjacent to the proposed solar project. Before anything else, I need to correct the public record. The applicant, New Energy Equity, has repeatedly submitted false or misleading information. At the last meeting, Jody Hunt stated that no registered farms exist near this site and claimed she checked with the county, the state, and the USDA. This is false. My wife and I own an active USDA registered farm listed with the USDA Farm Service Agency since 2014. One simple email confirmed this. We emailed this documentation proof to the board last week. The board now has two possibilities. Either New Energy Equity did not check with the USDA, or they received the correct information and chose not to disclose it. Both are serious, and your town code is clear. Providing false or misleading information is grounds for denial. This is not just an oversight. It directly calls into question the credibility of the applicant and whether any part of their 699-page submission can be trusted. In April 2024, the applicant originally submitted a copy and paste proposal referencing the town of Poland several times, a town over 200 miles away, and also referenced the city of Port Crane, which, as we know, doesn't exist. They clearly do not verify their filings. We also see inconsistencies with acreage and soil data. Their maps combine multiple D'Amato's-owned parcels to make it appear the solar array covers less than 50% of the land. If you look at the most recent soil maps provided by New Energy, you can clearly see the D'Amato's barn, garage, and house within the colored soil area. Yet the arrays are confined to one parcel. According to Broome County Soil and Water, 22 acres out of 27 are prime or statewide important farmland. It is this lot line, oh, I'm sorry, next slide. There's also a proposed lot line adjustment. If the lot line adjustment is approved, it would make this parcel even smaller, meaning they are trying to build something larger than allowed. This is based on their own definition of prime farmland. Broome County Soil and Water, a nonprofit affiliate of the USDA, they even share the same office on Upper Front Street, clearly states this is prime farmland. The last USDA survey was from October 2024, not years old as said earlier. Also, I'd like to know comments earlier about it floods regularly. I'd like to know when the last flood was, because I've lived there 23 years, I've only seen it flood twice. Also, on their 699-page application, the applicant attempts to discredit this by highlighting part of the USDA definition for prime farmland. They insinuate the soils are not considered prime farmland because they are not permeable, despite their own EFA assessment showing 83% permeability, which does meet the USDA standard for prime farmland definition. Why does their EAF say it's permeable, but their own statements and application contradict this? Next, I want to address the lot line adjustment. The town's solar law is clear. Solar arrays may not be placed in front of an existing structure on the same parcel. On this parcel, the barn makes it fully non-compliant. The only reason the lot line is being moved is to erase that problem on paper. This is not routine planning. It is an attempt to make a prohibited project appear allowable. Under seeker, this is a connected action. It cannot be segmented or treated as a minor administrative task. We also request that the board confirm whether this lot line change has been properly reviewed and approved as a subdivision under the town's authority. County approval does not replace the town's review or oversight. There's also been several exceptions in this. If a new development meets the guidelines but needs an exception or two, that's understandable. This proposal has several. They seem to find every exception allowed by law, including it should not be built in a floodplain unless the arrays are raised up. Should not be built near endangered species, similar to the bald eagles, unless construction avoids the 9-month mating season. Should not be built near protected wetlands, unless you keep it 100 feet away or get a permit from the DEC. It should also not be built near an active farm, unless you keep it about 500 feet away. Should not be built on prime farmland, unless you keep it under 50%. Should not be built in front of existing structure. Actually, that one, that's black and white. You can't change that one. Either way, they also supplied an emergency response plan. Was this approved by our town's fire and EMS? As it says they must in town code. This was also in Broome County's comments as well. Not only am I a professional firefighter and a paramedic, but I also work for the Broome County Office of Emergency Services, and I am the chief of Shenango Ambulance Services, the primary EMS agency for the town of Shenango. I can confirm that the town's fire and EMS departments do not have the equipment, training, or personnel to respond to a solar farm fire, nor have they been approached by New Energy Equity. In short, repeated misinformation, selective application of rules, attempts to bypass town law, and a lack of due diligence on filings makes this project untrustworthy. I ask the board to enforce the town code, insist on truthful filings, and require full compliance. The request tonight to close a public hearing is bothersome. Sorry, I lost my spot there. I'm sorry, the energy company has been dealing with this for a couple of years. This is going to affect me, my family, and my neighbors for at least the next 20 years, and most likely longer. The integrity of this process and the protection of residents and farmland depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Allen, and my husband and I own the active farm adjacent to the proposed site. So here we are once again to discuss the proposed Amato Solar Farm. And as Ms. Hunt noted, we've been at this for 3 years. I'm tired. And in the town's defense, there has been just cause for all the delays. We have attended every meeting regarding this site, even when the solar company's representatives have not. We have spent countless hours combing through the extensive application materials, and throughout this process, we have found numerous discrepancies between the statements made and the data actually provided. From the very first meeting, we pointed out errors, such as the wrong name on the application. The binder may be full of documents, but it provides very few real answers to questions we've been asking for years. Instead, it feels more like an attempt to distract us with volume rather than clarity. Even Broome County, in 2 separate letters, one as recent as last month, stated the application appears incomplete and lacking concrete answers. At last month's meeting, several planning board questions could not be answered by Ms. Hunt or the extensive documentation provided. Yes, it's been years, but years filled with incorrect information, inconclusive responses, code violations, constant revisions that lead to no real change, repeated tablings by the company, long delays for updates, and what increasingly appears to be a pattern of misinformation. So how long do we let this continue? As long as it takes to get the truth. Our community matters, and we should not allow industrial developers to pressure us into believing this project is a good idea or beneficial for our town. Building in a floodplain, on prime farmland, near wetlands, near endangered species, and adjacent to neighborhoods both up and downstream is irresponsible and dangerous. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, well, thank you for your participation. And the public hearing will remain open, although we're finished for tonight.
Correct. If there's anything else that the board would like to discuss amongst itself, I know Alex had identified the emergency response plan and asked for a letter from the local fire company, right, Alex?
Yeah, just, I guess that's kind of two-part, just to make sure that they're clear with being able to service the property. That's something that came up between meetings, just if you can get a will serve letter from them, that's decent. It goes along with your truck access. But the other piece is that emergency response plan. If it, the question came up from the public was who approves that. Typically it's submitted to the code office. But you could certainly ask that that goes through emergency response also for compliance, for their review of it via the fire department or emergency management.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else the board would like to bring up?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Carnegie.
Aye.
Mr. Zenner.
Aye.
Mr. Donnelly.
Aye. Thank you all.